Many parts of Europe are facing a surge in new coronavirus infections and hospitalizations. Governments are pushing unvaccinated people to get their shots as soon as possible. But vaccination rates across the continent still vary greatly. Let's take a look. Leading the pack is Portugal, which has 88% of its population fully vaccinated. Spain's also doing well at 80%. But as you can see, in Germany, just 69% of the population is fully vaccinated, relatively low rate compared with the rest of Western Europe. Now, much of Eastern Europe is also lagging behind, with countries such as Croatia, Slovakia, and Romania having vaccinated less than 50% of their populations. But the lowest vaccination rate in the EU is in Bulgaria at just over 26%. DW's Funny Fachar traveled to Bulgaria to find out what is keeping the vaccination rate there so low.
Many vaccination skeptics end up here, fighting to breathe in hospital. 3 doctors are caring for about 40 COVID-19 patients at this clinic in the town of Vratsa. Only half of the medical staff are vaccinated. That means that only a few can work on the COVID ward. Peter Karemchiev, who is in charge of the hospital, tries to explain what he himself struggles to understand.
Maybe it's connected to historical and behavioral nuances of Bulgarians. Bulgarians find it hard. I think we need a better campaign to educate people, spearheaded by politicians.
Skepticism and conflicting messages from doctors trickle through to ordinary citizens in this rural city in the poorest region of the country. The vaccination rate here is 30%. That's considered high here. The national average right now is at about 25%.
I am worried. It's not sufficiently tested. It's still in process.
I've seen videos that say that people who get vaccinated get some kind of a chip inserted.
False information like this is annoying to those who got vaccinated.
I
don't get it. So many people have died. Why don't they take matters into their own hands and get vaccinated?
This vaccination van is at a supermarket where sales attract customers, but hardly anyone is willing to receive their first jab. The medical team inside is frustrated.
We don't feel valued because despite all the work we're putting in, people refuse to get vaccinated for some reason.
Vaccination teams are understaffed too. Hundreds of doctors and nurses have left for better pay in Western Europe. The government in Bulgaria's capital, Sofia, has been unable to convince people about the safety and efficacy of coronavirus vaccines. The country remains the least vaccinated nation in the EU. Christian Gonev used to believe in vaccine conspiracy theories and shared false information about them on social media.
I was totally reckless. I'm ashamed of myself for this behavior.
He got vaccinated when his father got infected with COVID-19.
Thanks to the past 2 years, now I can see how foolish I looked in other people's eyes. Now I think people who still believe in this are foolish, just like I was.
Gonev changed his mind, but few others have. And for those continuing the fight to convince people to get vaccinated, it's increasingly hard to stay motivated.
Across the United Kingdom, people have been lining up at vaccine centres after the government opened up booster shots to anyone 18 years and over. Prime Minister Boris Johnson wants all adults to get a third jab before the new year as the Omicron variant surges. Cases there are doubling every 2 to 3 days, and the government says Omicron could become the dominant variant within days.
Rolling up their sleeves for a third time. Thousands of people in the UK lined up for their booster shots after Prime Minister Boris Johnson told the country they were facing an Omicron emergency.
We can see Omicron spiking now in London and some other parts of the country. Here in the capital, it probably represents about 40% of the cases. By tomorrow, it'll be the majority of the cases, and it's increasing time. And sadly, yes, Omicron is producing hospitalizations, and sadly, at least one patient has now been confirmed to have died with Omicron.
To combat what he called a tidal wave in cases, the Prime Minister announced a booster blitz, promising that everyone aged 18 and up could get a third vaccine dose before the new year. It's part of a range of measures to combat a surge in the more transmissible Omicron variant. People must now wear masks in most public places and work from home when possible as part of the government's so-called Plan B. In France, too, the government has announced measures in anticipation of an Omicron-fueled sixth wave of COVID. The first closures in months came into force this weekend, with nightclubs shuttered until at least January. In Austria, the mood is much more festive. After a 3-week nationwide lockdown, shops and cultural venues like theatres and museums have reopened, though the unvaccinated will still have to stay home. COVID cases here have plummeted, paving the way to a brighter Christmas. But with the Omicron variant spreading rapidly around the world, there is still much uncertainty about what the future holds.